This trainer has horses entered in stakes on Saturday at Delaware Park, Laurel Park, Churchill Downs, and in a grade 3 up at Woodbine in Canada. Where's he going to be? Graham Motion going to join me shortly to answer that question. A little bit farther down the road, Stan Salter going to be on to preview the races at Delaware Park. My name's Frank Vespi. This is Midlantic Racing Today, Delaware Park Today, powered by the Racing Biz, the racingbiz.com, presented by our friends at Delaware Park Racing and Casino. Please do like and subscribe. We appreciate that very much. And now, here's Graham Motion. Graham, thanks for joining me here on Midlantic Racing Today, Delaware Park Today. I'm going to start you with this question. This is a vital question, extraordinarily serious matter. I'm reading your bio on the Herringswell Stables website. It's herringswellstables.com for folks who are curious. And I come across the fact that you own a dog named Truly Scrumptious. And my question to you is, which member of the Motion family or the Herringswell family is naming dogs for Chitty Chitty Bang Bang characters?
Yeah, I mean, that was the first movie I ever watched in the theater, I think. It was actually my wife's doing. My children weren't that crazy about it, but yeah, we shortened it up to Truly, though.
That's a great movie. So
Classic.
Absolutely. A little Dick Van Dyke action. I was actually researching another horse, not a Graham Motion horse, the other day, named Flaming Emperor, that you might remember from the Kenny Cox had him in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. And I stumbled across an article in which Flaming Emperor had finished second, and the article is in the Baltimore Sun, quoted fairly extensively the assistant to the winning trainer, and that assistant was a young guy named Graham Motion, and the winning horse was a horse named Gala Spinaway. And I wonder if you talk a little bit about what Gala Spinaway meant to the Motion career.
Yeah, I mean, he was really our foundation horse. I think he was the horse that sort of put us on the map. When I actually when I worked for Bernie Bond, he was our big horse. Him and Valley Crossing had a big rivalry. Dickie Small trained Valley Crossing, and Gala Spinaway kind of won most of the local 3-year-old races. And then when I actually started training, he was laid up at Glade Valley, and my wife would work at Laurel with my assistant and I, and then she would go and get on him for his rehab at Glade Valley. So then he came back to us, and like I say, he was a horse that really put us on the map, because without him, I don't know people would have had confidence to send me the horses that they did.
Yeah, you won 3 stakes your first year of training, I understand. A graded stake, your first grade. It's the first of many graded stakes. But I thought the coda of the story, in a way, is even better. He lives to be 1,000,000 years old, sort of right outside your door, and has a buddy late in life.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, him and Better Talk Now were two of they really were my foundation horses, you know.
So, and they lived together for like the last several years of Better Talk Now's life, right?
Yeah, they really were sort of the two ultimate grumpy old men. I mean, Gala Spinaway was tough, and Better Talk Now was not easy himself. So they were real characters. It was a pleasure to take care of them and have them around for so long.
Was yeah, I mean, what is it sort of like? You come to work and you look out, and like there's the horse that kind of got you started, and then there's the horse that took you to a whole new level.
Yeah, I think it's first of all, I think the horses, you know, a lot of these horses don't actually like the routine of just being put out in the field and forgotten about. These two horses, they liked the schedule. You know, they were so used to their routine that I think some of these racehorses, they just get used to a routine and they can't be taken away from it. So, but it was great to have them around. People always came to see them. And actually now we have Main Sequence, who won the Breeders' Cup for me. We have him at our little farm up the road here. So, you know, I see him most every day, which is not only a good reminder of things past, but it's also just good to have him around.
Yeah, sure. He was another terrific horse. He came from abroad, right?
Yeah, he was third, I believe, in the Epsom Derby for David Lanigan. And then he came over to us with Flaxman. And, I trained for Flaxman at the time. And he did phenomenal things.
Yeah, yeah. And talk about better talk now. He won like $4 million, and people loved his, he was black and the closing style, like kind of the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that's what captured a lot of people was his style. He had that extraordinary kick, and if you didn't wait, he would not get there. But if you waited and you were patient, Ramon just had such an understanding of him and just was so patient because he was also a tough horse to ride. He wanted to be aggressive early, but you just couldn't let him go early. So, and then we also had, we got frustrated that often in those races there was no pace, so we had to shake the bank. So right. I think it kind of became a bit of a, they became quite a team.
I'm curious. I mean, I remember, Shake the Bank would go to the front and try to create a pace, but in situations like that, I mean, after a while, kind of everyone knew what Shake the Bank was going to do. Does that blunt the effectiveness of the strategy?
I think it was important that that Shake the Bank didn't just gun out to the lead and forget about the rest of the field. We always had a feeling that we would keep him within reach of the field until sort of halfway down the backstretch. And then if he made a little bit of a premature move, somebody was always going to commit to go after him early. And that's when it became affected, is that it tended to make people make a premature move, which is what helped Better Talk now.
Now you grew up, your folks were in the thoroughbred industry and you grew up in England, but then you came here, I think you were like 16-ish. And when did you decide I want to be in the thoroughbred industry as well?
Yeah, I mean, I was very much brought up with it. I always had illusions of being a jockey, which I was never going to be small enough or brave enough to do. but I had that idea. That's what I wanted to do. When I grew up, you maybe watched horse racing on a Saturday afternoon on the television. That was the only time you got to watch it, and that was something we always did. We always watched horse racing on a Saturday afternoon. When I left high school, I went to work on a horse farm in France, and I love being around the horses, but I found the farm life was pretty slow. We worked from 7 till 4, and that didn't appeal to me. I loved the racetrack and the fact that things were always happening. Mm-hmm. That aspect of the life on the horse farm in France really appealed to me. And then I came back and started working for Jonathan Shepherd. I think my dad thought if I worked for Jonathan Shepherd, it would put me off for life.
Why is that?
Because it was long, cold winters in Pennsylvania and hard work.
I had a horse with Shepherd 20 years ago, more or less. One horse didn't work out, but such an interesting experience, so different from kind of what you get at the racetrack. If you could distill it to a thing or two or three, what'd you take away from that experience that helps you now?
Oh, I mean, that's kind of what I base my training on. Jonathan was all about getting fillies to relax and horses to settle, and sort of the opposite of the Wayne Lucas methodology, the Wayne Lucas method of training, if you like. Right. So look, that's how I was brought into it. Jonathan was a workaholic. I think I learned my work ethic. So yes, it was. I always say it was I didn't go to college, but that was my 4 years of college was working for Jonathan.
I have this memory, but I'm not sure it's an accurate memory. I have a memory that he hand wrote the bills for owners. Is that true?
100%. I lived in a house with him. I watched him do that, which was always extraordinary to me. When he was working in the barn, he was doing the billing.
Mm-hmm. I remember talking with his assistant, I guess, and she was kind of climbing up a wall because she's like, Jonathan has to do this by hand, and then we're always late with the bills because of that.
Yeah, I can vouch for that.
Did I one of the things I thought was sort of amazing about him. I mean, when I think we were with him sort of right after, shortly after his peak, but he still had a million horses. But you could call him pretty much any time and get him, and he would know. They're like, oh yeah, we did this, this, and this, but this, and we're going to give him that, and like he kind of had it all down.
Yeah, he was about as hands-on as you get, and I think that's probably also instilled into me. Look, Jonathan would go to the track, whether it was Delaware in the morning or the Meadowlands perhaps, and then he'd drive back to the farm, and then we'd start working the horses sort of around 10 or 11 o'clock. So we were there till 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, because at that point he'd already trained horses at one location and had now moved on to training in another location, and often led the works himself. That was very often he would lead the works on the farm himself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The horse we had with them was a colt, and at one point, I think it was Jim Bergen was his assistant then, and he called me up and said, basically he's starting to act a little coltish, but before we cut him, we're going to put him in a field with some geldings and see if they could teach him manners, and they did. Is my recollection.
Yeah, I could never turn out the horse. We turn out our horses, but I could never do it the way Jonathan did, which was pretty much, we would have 4 or 5 fillies and mares, or 4 or 5 jumpers all turned out together. And they did get some injuries, but it also, that's what made them so good. It made them tough, and it settled them for when they were training.
So then you were working for Bernie Bond. That was the Gala Spinaway days, and he passed away, and you took over some of his owners and began to build the business. And then was it 2002-ish? You guys decided you left Laurel and moved up to Fair Hill. What was the thought process there?
I think we were growing. I think back then it was much more limited how many horses you could have on the backstretch. And we were just getting a little claustrophobic having everything at Laurel. We wanted to spread out, and I think I took some horses to Delaware for the summer, and then I met Bruce Jackson, who's been a big a barn owner at Fair Hill since I can remember, and we started renting some stalls from Bruce at Fair Hill.
Mm-hmm. Does that help get do you attract more sort of national profile owners, quote unquote, being at Fair Hill than you might at Laurel?
It's funny you say that, because I firmly believe that if I'd started at a training center, I wouldn't have been as successful, because back then you really needed to be on the track, because nobody knew much about Fair Hill. Training centers were not really sexy back then. They've become more of something that people want to be a part of. But back when I started, that was not the case. And look, Michael Dickinson probably put Fair Hill on the map, I would imagine, with the horse. He was the one that was here, and it wasn't really, you didn't really train horses at a training center successfully before that point. That was my sentiment.
So it was kind of a leap of faith then for you guys.
Yes, it was, and it was more the way I wanted to do things. Again, going back to the Jonathan Shepherd School, it was the way we trained horses and the way that I was more comfortable. Being at Fair Hill, we had a lot more options of what we could do with the horses on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Do you think that helps them?
Yes, mentally, and again, getting horses to settle, I think it's huge. Look, the only drawback of being at Fair Hill is every time we race, we have to ship to the racetrack.
Somewhere, right.
Not all horses handle that, but most of them benefit from that.
Do you try to get horses to go over a track? Like if you're racing at Delaware, like I've been talking to a bunch of Delaware trainers lately, and a lot of them feel like training on the dirt is a helpful thing for them at Delaware, that the track is maybe somewhat particular, and training over it gives them a bit of an advantage. Do you try to do that at all with horses? Like if you're racing at Delaware on the dirt?
Yeah, I think Delaware is a prime example of where that's important. I mean, we trained fondly over there last year for the Delaware Oaks, and I think that definitely gives you a leg up training on that track. It's a tricky track. We actually keep stalls. We have about 25 horses at Delaware, so we have that luxury of being able to switch them in and out. Look, we train mostly grass horses, but if I have a dirt horse, yes, I would like to have them down there training on the.
This is trainer Graham Motion on Midlantic Racing Today, powered by the Racing Biz.
We'll move on to your current horses, but a horse that we of course have to mention here, Animal Kingdom, coming on. And we'll talk about this horse because you've got another horse that ran in the Jeff Ruby Stakes, but Animal Kingdom ran in whatever the version of the Jeff Ruby Stakes was back then, and then parlayed that into a Kentucky Derby. How sort of confident were you heading into that Derby?
Oh, not. After he won at Turfway, we'd never breezed him on the dirt. I'd always breezed him on the grass in Palm Meadows. He came to me, obviously he looked like he was bred to be a grass horse. Funnily enough, the first horse that Team Valor sent me was a horse called Pluck, who had won the Breeders' Cup for Todd. And every time I worked Animal Kingdom with Pluck, he always outworked him. And I kind of said to Barry, Pluck may be a good horse, but this Animal Kingdom, he seems very good. He'd been with Wayne Catalano as a 3-year-old. So after he won the Spiral, one of the conditions that Barry and I put out to each other was that we had to breeze him on the dirt one time before we went to the Derby. And I think we finally got to do it. The weather cooperated the last weekend before the Derby at Churchill, because back then Keeneland was synthetic, which was where we were training him.
Now, my recollection is when he did work on the dirt, that opened a lot of eyes. Like a lot of people were saying, this horse is really getting over this well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was probably when I started feeling that we could be competitive. I think the first comment I heard was that Baffert had watched him breeze and said that's a horse to beat. So, obviously you take a tremendous amount of respect for that opinion. And I think that's when I realized that we were pretty serious.
Yeah. What was the experience like going through all that?
The lead up was, it's always fun, the lead up. I wasn't one of the favorites. I think when you're under scrutiny as a favorite, there's probably a bit more pressure, but I think we were 20-1 or 21-1. So I didn't feel that kind of pressure. I'd been to the Derby before, but I don't know that I'd ever felt that I'd had such a live horse at that point, if you like. The day itself was a bit of a frenzy, and afterwards, you just don't expect to win a race like that. You hope to be competitive, but I don't think you go into the Derby thinking I'm going to win this race today. So everything afterwards was just happened very quickly, and then you wake up the next morning and everybody wants to know if you're going to run in the Preakness. That's the next question. So you don't get a lot of time to sort of enjoy the euphoria of winning the Derby, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I would think too, the other funny thing about, being a horse trainer is you wake up the next morning and the horse needs to be walked and fed, and all the other horses need all the things all the horses need. It's not like you won the World Series and you can say, hey, I'm going to sleep in. I'm not going to do anything for a couple of days. Like, the horses need what they need.
Yeah, I think one of the funniest things that came out of that was that we didn't want to rush back to Fair Hill. Our kids were supposed to be in school on Monday morning, and I think the headmaster said that was the best excuse he'd ever heard for not having your kids come to school was winning the Kentucky Derby.
Please excuse our children. We just won the Kentucky Derby. I
Exactly.
like it. You mentioned the Preakness. I'll briefly touch on this. You're on the board of the Maryland Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association. News last week that the governor had decided that Maryland would match the Churchill Downs offer for the Preakness intellectual property, which means Maryland will own the Preakness intellectual property. What was the mood of the MTHA board when that news came out?
Oh, very happy. I mean, I think that was really important for Maryland, for the state, and more importantly for racing. I think we needed to keep that in Maryland, and credit to David and Alan for those moving parts and getting it done, and thanks to the governor for making it happen. Nothing against Churchill, but it was important that it stayed in Maryland.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the Maryland racing without the Preakness is a pretty different beast than Maryland racing with the Preakness. So
yeah, and I think it was the uncertainty of we didn't really know what would come down the road if we didn't have control of that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right, want to touch on a couple horses you've had that are kind of recently back in the win column. One of the great names in horse racing, Izzy Vungu Vungu, gets back in, wins at Laurel the other day. Talking with your assistant, Ian Wilson, he's thinking maybe a Colonial Downs trip is in his future. What's the thought process now?
Yeah, I think definitely the timing is very good to run him on Arlington Million Day at Colonial. I think he may have run in that race before when he first won over here. It was around that time anyway. But yes, I think Colonial makes the most sense. He's run well on the track. The timing's very good. Gives him enough time to get over this effort from the other day, which I think was a pretty good effort off a long layoff.
Yeah, for sure. It seemed like, I mean, you had said at the time he was brought over, essentially the idea was to run in the Breeders' Cup with him, and he ran pretty well. I mean, he was beating 2 lengths for all of it, although there were 6 horses between him and the win. But and last year you took him over to Dubai, and did that kind of knock him sideways a little bit, that trip?
I think probably the whole process did. When these guys came from South Africa, they had 2 months cooped up in quarantine. We were on a really rigid schedule to get to the Breeders' Cup. I agree with you. I think actually his Breeders' Cup effort was pretty good. And if he didn't have such a troubled trip, he probably hits the board. Probably wasn't the right thing to go to Dubai after that. It was asking a lot of him, but he was doing well and we wanted to take a shot. And these guys are really international. They love the international racing. It's very important to them. But I felt that when we got back from Dubai, he was a tired horse and he needed a break. He was a 7-year-old at the time, and he hadn't had a break since he came to me from South Africa. So I think hopefully that's done him the world of good. But he is now an 8-year-old, so he's getting up there.
Right. The window is limited at this point, but
exactly.
But it was a good effort at Laurel, and he certainly feels like a horse that can go back into stakes company like you're talking about doing and be very competitive.
Yeah, we slipped into that race. It was a perfect spot to bring him back in. So hopefully it was a good prep to get him to Colonial on the 1st of August.
Another horse, you had a winner yesterday at Delaware with Brat Pack, first time in allowance company after running in stakes 3 times after breaking the maiden. It was a good looking win. Where to now with Brat Pack?
Yeah, I think we'll go back to looking at stakes. I felt like she deserved to have a win. She'd been running very competitively in stakes races. So, I think now as a 3-year-old winning an allowance race, you have to go back to stakes. And hopefully she's, over the summer, she can win one of those. I think probably distance-wise, she's perhaps a little limited. So we'll probably keep her around a mile.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, this is the Motion Barn time of year. It's the heart of turf season. And this is your Saturday. You got 3 horses in stakes at Delaware. You got another horse in a stake at Laurel. You've got a multiple graded winner in the Anchorage at Churchill Downs. And you got a horse in the grade 3 up at Woodbine. I'm pretty sure they've only made one of you. So where are you going to be on Saturday?
Yeah, I'll be at Delaware. I just hope, the tough part of being a turf trainer is I hope the weather cooperates, because it looks pretty rough in Kentucky and it doesn't look great at Delaware. So I hope we don't get the rain that they're calling for.
Yeah. Will you come out if they're off the turf?
Yeah, I may run Kravitz off the turf. He's always trained well over the track at Delaware, so it's a possibility I could run him, but I would not run the other 2, Turf Star or Bless Her.
Let's talk about Turf Star a minute. Won the Jimmy Murphy last time out over Preakness weekend, 2nd career win. Interesting thing about him is you ran him in the Jeff Ruby, which used to be the Spiral where Animal Kingdom won. Were you thinking, maybe what were you thinking when you ran in the Jeff Ruby?
Look, at the time, it's the races in Gulfstream are very competitive for less money. It's a nice race with a big purse. I honestly think he would have run better. I think what we discovered from those first 2 races this year is he just doesn't want to be rushed. He's not a horse that wants to be rushed. And I was very adamant with Georgie when he rode him on Preakness Day that he just took his time with him, took him back, gave him a chance. And I think it really paid off, which was very rewarding. And I was, grateful to Georgie for giving him such a patient ride.
Yeah, he's really good, isn't he?
He's a brilliant turf rider. He's very, look, it's about patience, and he actually reminds me a lot of Ramon in that respect, that he's got very quiet hands and just has this great knack of getting horses to settle.
The thing I remember about Ramon, and other thing, is his sense of timing was just so good. Like, I remember you'd watch races sometimes and he'd get a horse going and you'd say, oh, it's too late. The horse can't get there. And he would not only get there, but get there with something to spare.
Phenomenal. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and that's turf racing, right? That's what you've got to do. And sometimes it's going to work and sometimes it isn't. It's not always going to work.
How is everybody coming into the Delaware Stakes? How's Bless Her, who's going in the Christiana, also with Giorgio?
Yeah, we've pointed her for this race. I mean, she was really lost a tough head bob at Keeneland in that allowance race. She's a big filly, doesn't carry a lot of weight, so we've really had this race in mind, being that it's a 1 1/8, and I think she needs every bit of that.
And then we mentioned Turf Star. You got Kravitz. You said you might stay in with Kravitz regardless. He was 5th in the Audubon last time out. What's the game plan there?
Yeah, I think he's been a little unlucky, to be honest. He was unlucky in his allowance race at Keeneland, didn't have the best trip. Probably didn't have a perfect trip at Churchill last time. He's a horse that, again, needs the 1 1/8. I think down the road, he's probably going to be a 1 1/4, 1 1/2 type horse. But I think he's going to be a useful horse. It's a good family, but it's a family of stamina.
Got Hard Spun Reason and the Japan Racing Association at Laurel, looking for a first stakes win for that one.
Yeah, he's kind of a barn favorite now. He's an older horse. He's a terrible stall walker at home. So we built his own stall for him where he can go inside and outside.
Wow.
He lives most of the day out in the paddock, and like I say, he's a real barn favorite. Lovely horse to be around, apart from this crazy stall walking habit he has. I got a little off track with him last year. You know, he ran so well at Monmouth that day. I think he won going a 1.5 miles, or was he second at Monmouth? And then we stretched him out and ran him in the 2-mile race at Far Hills, which was a mistake. I thought he ran well in his comeback race this year. We always give him the winter off. I can't take him to Florida because of his habits. So he usually gets turned out on the farm over the winter. And I thought his comeback race was really good, a little unlucky. He's a horse that gets unlucky because he probably isn't quick enough to overcome difficult trips, right? So he needs to have a good trip.
Which is it's a tough way to make a living as a turf horse, is if you are tough to get that good trip since everybody's kind of running with each other. What makes him such a favorite? I'm sorry.
I think just because he's been here for so long and he has this quirky habit, so everyone's very used to dealing with him, and we have to work around his quirkiness probably. So we're all just very attached to him. We actually, when he goes to the races, we send a pony with him, so he has a companion. He lives next to the pony, so they're kind of inseparable. So they go to the races together. The pony gets a day out.
It is funny that the attachments they can make, isn't it?
Yeah, they're herd animals. I mean, they like to be together.
Yeah. It was a pretty nice Preakness weekend for you guys. You had Turf Star win the Murphy, and Warming won the Gallarat, which was her second graded stakes win. Now shipping down to Churchill for the Anchorage. Boy, those purses are nice down there, aren't they?
Yeah, the purses are phenomenal. We could have waited for the matchmaker here, but you're liable to run into a couple of chads if you do that. I felt this was a better spot looking at the nominations. Timing's good, the money's very good, and I think the distance actually suits her. She's a pretty adaptable filly. She's run down the hill at Santa Anita, but I think she'll get the 1 1/8.
And another horse out of the Gallarat was Rebalta Gaia, who's headed to Canada. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the thought behind that was she needs pace. She's ended up on the lead several times that she's run over here, and she just the reason John brought her over from Europe was because she just never got any pace in the races, and that's kind of happened to her a little bit here. So it looks like there's a ton of speed in this race. This race is usually run over 6 or 7 on the outer turf course at Woodbine, but I guess the outer turf course is not in commission at the moment. So we're running on the inner turf course, and they lengthened it to 7.5. But there's a lot of speed in the race, which should help her.
Yeah, the old 7.5 furlongs. That's a screwball distance.
It is, and I think if you're drawn on the outside, it's tough. So it's a big field. It's going to be about the trip, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, it should be a busy weekend. Hopefully it's a productive one for your barn. You've won. You're closing in. Probably not next, possibly next year, but almost certainly the year after. You're going to hit 3,000 wins. Coming up on $170 million in career earnings. Could you have imagined any of that when you were a young fella starting out?
No way. No. It's pretty gratifying. Look, I've been very lucky. I've had great clients. I got a very supportive wife, and we've just been very fortunate. We've got a great team and great horses, so we've been very lucky.
Yeah. In the end, it's about the horses, which is about the owners, isn't it?
100%. I mean, you have to have the backing of the owners, and you have to have the good horses, and I think that's why we always stay in the game, because we're always waiting for the next good horse. And I've been fortunate to have some really nice horses.
Yeah. So when you get the 2-year-olds in, are you immediately kind of thinking like, what does the future look like with these guys?
Yeah, you definitely think about it. This is what keeps you going every year. You have to be generating the 2-year-olds to race at this level, right? So you're always kind of looking out for the future stars. We ran Mean Mary's first foal, the gun runner filly, a couple of weeks ago, which was exciting to have her on the track. So yeah, we're just getting started with some of these guys, it's always an exciting time of year.
Yeah. And you with Sharon, you won the juvenile fillies turf, right?
That's right. Yes, and that family has been very good to me. I mean, Shared Account won the Breeders' Cup at 40-1, and who would have imagined you could win with her daughter, several years later. So
yeah,
it's been a really good family for us. Sparkle Blue,
it's
phenomenal
nice
family.
One. Yeah, Sparkle Blue's made like $1 million, hasn't she?
Yeah, she had. She'd made closer to $1.5 million. She was retired, I think, last year. Did she run last year? Anyway, she was retired recently, so she would be in foal now.
A lot of good stuff there. All right. Well, I will let you go. Graham Motion, thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate it. And we'll wish you good luck this weekend.
Thank you. It was fun talking. Enjoyed it.
Next up on Midlantic Racing Today, Delaware Park Today, Frank Vespi talks with Stan Salter, Delaware Park on-air analyst. Hey, Stan, good to be with you. Thanks for joining me here on Delaware Park Today. Coming off a $3 million day last Thursday, so a week ago today that we're recording. Let's see what you got up your sleeve for this weekend. Nice card Saturday, 8 races, couple of stakes, both of them on the turf. You guys looking forward to a good day Saturday?
Hopefully. We need a little luck with the weather. There's some rain in the forecast, so we gotta try to keep that away. But we'll probably get some rain. They have 3 races carded on the grass for Saturday. Races 4, 6, and 8. Races 6 and 8 are the big features. Race 6 is the Christiana Stakes for 3-year-old fillies, $150,000 purse on the turf. And then the Kent Stakes for 3-year-olds, also $150,000 purse. And both races are going 9 furlongs on the turf. So hopefully we'll be able to keep the 2 stakes on the turf. If they have to take race 4 off, that's a maiden race. I believe that's a maiden 16,000 going 5/8 on the grass. So if we do get some rain, they might have to take race 4 off the turf. But hopefully we'll be able to leave the big features on the turf, because we have some nice 3-year-olds, fillies, and the boys from all over the country coming to these races. We have Brad Cox, Kenny McPeak, Rusty Arnold, Michael Stidham, Mike Gorham. Stidham has 2 horses in the Christiana. In Motion has a nice homebred in there for Shell Evans, and you have Michael Matz with a nice horse in there. So that's just the Christiana. Then the Kenny McPeak's got one in there. Mac Robertson has two nice horses in there. Rusty Arnold's in the Ken. Graham Motion has two nice horses. Phil Schoenthal. Fernando Abreu has a nice horse in there, and then John Service trying the turf. So we have some big time horses, big time connections from all over the country coming on Saturday. So we need a little luck with the rain so we can keep these nice stake races on the turf.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed for that. We'll channel the late, great Rich Glazier. It never rains on Saturday at Delaware Park was his saying. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed for that. I know there's a couple other races you want to touch on, which we will do, but let's start with the two big stakes. You have the Christiana, that's race 6, going a mile and an eighth on the turf. And I looked at these races. These are pretty contentious races, man. You could go a bunch of different ways.
Sure, yeah. The Christiana drew a field of 8 top 3-year-old fillies in there. And it's hard not to fall in love with the breeding of the 1 and the 2. The 1 is 2 Aflame for trainer Rusty Arnold. This filly is by Justify, who of course is turning out to be a real good turf sire. Justify is by Scat Daddy, so that's where he gets his turf influence. And this filly is out of a Galileo mare, so some real nice turf breeding there. They paid $375,000 for this filly as a yearling at Keeneland. So she has some real nice breeding. She had a nice allowance win going a mile on the turf at Gulfstream last March. Looks like the 2 grade 2s she ran in Kentucky were just a little too tough. So she gets a little class relief in the Christiana. It's not a graded stake, but still $150,000. There's some nice fillies in here. Julian Laperouge named to ride the 1 2 Aflame. And then you have the 2 Soloists who's by Into Mischief. They can run on anything. And this filly's out of a Scat Daddy mare, so some real nice turf pedigree there. And she had a nice debut win going long on the turf at Ellis last August as a 2-year-old. That's her only win. She ran a decent third, looks like, last out against Stakes Company out there at Indiana. So that's a real nice filly in there. I like the Graham Motion filly in there a lot. The 7 Bless Her, a homebred for Robert S. Evans. She's by Twirling Candy out of a Giants Causeway mare. So there's some real nice turf pedigree. And she just ran her best race ever last time at Keeneland, going a mile and 3/16 on the turf. That was back in mid-April. She rallied to finish second that day, only beaten a nose 78 by her speed figure. She's been off since then, so she's had a couple months freshening. The Motion Barn, about 20% with horses coming back after this kind of time off. They had a nice win on Wednesday this week here at Delaware, the Motion Barn, so they're off the dock. Now they'll probably start winning a bunch of races, so they could win the Christiana for sure with the 7 Bless Her. So that's just 3 horses I mentioned. There's 8 in there. Who do you like in there? There's some other ones in there that absolutely have a shot. But I initially like the 1 2 Aflame, the 2 Soloists, and the 7 Bless Her.
Yeah, no, I mean, those are definitely logical players in this spot. You also, the Cox horse. I mean, I feel like you got to respect the Cox horse. If he's going to ship to Delaware, you got to take a look at him. That's the 3 Scratch It, who was second in the PG Johnson, second in the grade 3 out there on the turf. Makes third start off the bench. She's by Tap It too. Just some really nice breeding in here. I feel like that might be a horse to offer a little bit of value, because I don't think the buyer figs don't quite stack up with a few of these. So what do you think of? I think an interesting horse here a little bit, and maybe more if it comes off, but is Mike Gorham's horse, Miss Fulton Gal by Rock Your World. Rock Your World was a decent turf horse.
Sure, yeah, Candy Ride sire, so absolutely some turf pedigree there. Raul Mena, local rider, will ride for Gorham. Gorham's having a good meet. They've had 4 nice wins at the meet, and this filly's run some nice races. She's a stakes winner this year. Back in March down at Laurel, when she rallied to win the Beyond the Wire Stakes, going a mile on the main track. She was an okay fourth in the Weber City Miss. It wasn't her day in the Black Eyed Susan, but she's capable of better than that. It'll be interesting to see her getting on the turf for the first time. I think they're doing the right thing. They have a nice filly. They made 168,000 with her. She's run just a couple okay races. So now recently. So they want to try something new, see if they can get her back onto her best stride. She's a 3-time winner from 10 starts. I know the owners of this filly, Trot Racing Stable LLC, and Five Sisters. The Five Sisters are Jimbo Berchelli's 5 daughters, and the Trot Racing guy, the Trot's married to one of the daughters. So you got some Jimbo Berchelli influence here with the 5 Miss Fulton gal. She trains here at Delaware, so she's a local filly, local trainer, local jockey. So I'll be rooting for her for sure. I like all the connections. It's good to see the locals do well here. They did well on a big Delaware Derby day. You had the 1-2 finishers in the Delaware Oaks, and then you had Gary Capuano, who's stabled here, win the Delaware Derby. So we had a big local day for Delaware Derby and Del Oaks. So the 5 Miss Fulton gal, she'll be a price in there for sure. Trying the turf for the first time, she'll be a big price. The filly that you mentioned, Scratch It for Brad Cox, local jockey Martin Shawan has the mount there. So that's a big mount that he's getting from the Brad Cox barn. Yeah, they paid almost $500,000 for this filly last year as a couple years ago as a yearling. Fasig tipped in Saratoga August sale. They paid $490,000 for this filly. Yes, you mentioned the buyers are maybe just a touch lower than some of the other contenders in here, but at least I think they did the right thing by taking her to Indiana last out. They found a nice little soft allowance race. She was the heavy favored in an 8-horse field, and she won by nearly 3 lengths. Only a 64 buyer speed figure. But that win certainly had to help her confidence and get her back onto her A game. She was second in a grade 3 at Santa Anita last October. She won her debut going long on the turf at Saratoga against Maiden Special Weight Company at 12-1. She beat the next out winner in there. So she's done a lot of things right. Just the buyers are a little low, but she's by Tappet. They paid a bunch of money for the filly, so she could absolutely take a big jump forward.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was thinking. One horse we haven't touched on, but let's touch on her now is Warbell for Stidham. This is a horse that dropped into maiden claiming to graduate 3 races ago. Last time out was on the dirt and won an allowance there at Delaware. But the race that I think is a little interesting is the race in between. She was 5th, but only beaten 4 lengths in an allowance at Laurel. That effort pretty well flattered when Coach Missoula comes back and wins the Hilltop Stakes next time out over Preakness weekend.
Yep, and the horse that was 3rd in that race came back to win also. Yes, that was a productive race back in April down at Laurel. They got the money with this filly at 12-1 last time on a sloppy track going a mile. She marched right to the front with Julio Hernandez and galloped that day by 2.5. 79 buyer speed figure, lifetime best number for the filly. Better number than what she was getting on the turf. But she did win on the turf, so she's versatile. She can win turf or dirt, and she's in good form right now. That was a sharp win, May 21st. So she'll be interesting. She's by War of Will. War of Will. He was a grade 1 winner on the turf, I believe. He won the Preakness, and then he won a grade 1 turf race, I believe, as a 4-year-old. So he's by Warfront, and this filly's out of a Galileo mare. So you have to love the turf pedigree there, and she's sharp and in good form off that last one on the main track, and she has some early speed. So there's she'll I'm just kind of she might be the main early speed in this race, just kind of glancing over it. There's a couple other fillies that have a little speed. The other Michael Stidham filly in there by Gunrunner, who's trying the turf for the 2nd time. It was a disaster her first time at Kentucky Downs last year, but she has a little early speed. So you hope you don't see both Stidham horses out there going head and head for the early lead. But the 6 Warbell could absolutely be the pace setter here in the Christiana, and we'll see how far she can go.
All right, that is the Christiana Stakes, 1.8 mile, 3-year-old fillies. 2 races later, we got the Kent. That's 3-year-old boys going 1.8 miles. And another kind of interesting group: Rusty Arnold, Kenny McPeak, obviously a couple Graham Motions. You mentioned Fernando Abreu, Service. So kind of you got people coming from all over the place for these races. What do you got?
Nice.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I had to come up for water there for a second. Yeah, it's a nice field of 9 in here. And Kenny McPeak's horse, I like a little bit. That was a good third last out at Churchill early June against a tough allowance field. That was 3 and up. So that was against older horses last time. And he finished a decent third with a 78 buyer speed figure. So he'll get a ground saving trip. He should be a formidable foe. Mac Robertson has 2 nice horses in the race. Just JoJo broke her maiden on June 6th, ran back on June 13th, 7 days later on the turf against Allowance Company. She was 10-1, and she just marched right to the front that day and galloped. She won with a big 77 buyer speed figure. So she's an interesting colt by constitution. The 2 Just JoJo, the 3 McCready, the other Mac Robertson horse in the race by Practical Joke. He had a real nice win back in April at Keeneland against Allowance Company, going 1 mile and 3/16. He went right to the front that day and went all the way and won by a neck with an 80 buyer speed figure. So he'll be tough in there. I like Motion's horse in there a lot. The 5 Turf Star, Jorge Riaz will ride. They teamed up for a nice win on Wednesday. And this horse was a good second, broke its maiden in a big maiden special weight at Kentucky Downs, going 1 mile on the turf. If you have a nice maiden, those are the maiden special weights to try to win at Kentucky Downs. That's like winning a stake. She's already made almost 300,000. This colt, I keep calling them she. These are all colts here in the Ken. But yeah, so that was and then she came back and he came back and was a big second in the Bourbon at Keeneland. And then he had a nice allowance win, a nice stakes win last out in the Jimmy Murphy on Preakness Day at Laurel with a 77 buyer speed figure, lifetime best number. So Turf Star by Caravaggio, he's a real nice colt for Graham Motion. He's razor sharp right now. So I like him. You know, I'm a big fan of the Motion Barn. They do awfully well here at Delaware. Graham's probably won this race, I don't know, 10, 11 times. I'll have to check the stats.
Yeah.
But so the 5 Turf Star, he is a nice homebred for Calumet Farm and Graham Motion.
Yeah, he has. Interesting thing about him, you know, he ran in the Kitten's Joy to start the year. Then they detoured, put him on the synthetic in the Jeff Ruby Stakes, which might suggest that they were thinking about, you know, Kentucky Derby, Triple Crown kind of things with him, because that's a 100-point race on the Derby Trail. No good there, but that's all right. That was a different surface. Then back on the turf, wins the Jimmy Murphy. So pretty interesting sequence there. Any interest in Zeppelin for Rusty Arnold? Keeps running pretty good thirds in Stakes Company.
Yeah, he keeps showing up. Rusty's putting the blinkers on for the first time in the Kent, so we'll see if that'll make him take a little step forward. Nice 3-year-old colt here by Munnings out of a Tappet mare, a homebred for Ellen J. Foxwoods of Kentucky. Yeah, only one bad race. That was a grade 3 at Keeneland on a good turf course early April. He didn't really fire at all that day. But then ran a good third last out at Churchill Downs, going 9 furlongs on a firm turf course against Stakes Company with a 79 buyer speed figure. He got an 80 in the Dania Beach at Gulfstream last January. So yeah, he's an interesting horse. He likes to finish third, but the blinkers on could help his focus and make him take a little step forward. Julian Laperoux rides. You have to use him on your deeper multi-race wagers. Yeah, I would say the 4 Zeppelin is definitely a user. I like the 1, 2, 3, 5 mostly in this race. The 4 Zeppelin, you have to use on a deeper ticket. The other motion runner in the race is 6 Kravitz, gets Kevin Gomez to ride. He's a nice 3-year-old by Justify out of an American Pharoah mare. American Pharoah's turned out to be a pretty good turf sire. And this horse had a nice maiden score, going 9 furlongs on the firm turf at Gulfstream last March, and then a good third at Keeneland, and just ran okay last out against Stakes Company at Churchill. Zeppelin beat him in that race. But he's a 3-year-old that's won some big races for a top barn here. Then you have Phil Schoenthal's horse, the 7 Classic Nafti. Victor Carrasco's coming to town to ride, and this horse had a nice allowance win against PA Bred Allowance Company at Penn National. Then they tried to Penn Mile, a grade 3 at Penn National, and he didn't run too bad in there. It was a 5-horse field. He was 4th, got an 80 buyer speed figure, so he ran all right. And then the 8 Chicken Dance had a nice win against Florida Bred Allowance Company 2 starts ago at Gulfstream, and then had a nice win on the Tapeta last time at Gulfstream. So he's a interesting horse. And the John Service horse, the 9 Timeless Victory, he tried the sprinting on the turf last year against Stakes Company when he was in a different barn. He didn't run very well at all. He's had a couple wins since then on the main track. They tried him in the Florida Derby last March. That didn't go well. He needed a break. The comeback race at Parks didn't go very well. So they're trying anything here to see if they can get this horse back on track. They put the blinkers on. He'll be a big price in there. Who do you think would be the morning line favorite in this race? So you could probably make a cut to 2 or 3 different ones. The morning line favored in this 9-horse Kent field.
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I mean, I guess you could be right. You could make a case of Turf Star as a stakes winner. Is he the only Turf Stakes winner in the field? He might be.
He could be. Yep, I think he is.
I mean, I guess you could look at Zeppelin too as multiple stakes placed with pretty good fig ship in. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I think both these races are interesting. I mean, I feel like you kind of feel like somebody in these races, or maybe one in each, is ready to kind of break out, but it's hard to figure out who that is, Yeah,
it's a nice race. The racing office did a nice job putting together both these stake races. All our stake races this year have had some real nice horses coming from a bunch of different places. So it'll be interesting to see who the morning line favorite is in this race. I think, but I think it'll be a good betting race. If you don't like the favored, and I don't think there'll be a heavy favorite in either race. I think the favorite might be going off at around 2 to 1, 5 to 2. So that's a nice price. And then all the other prices makes all the other prices a lot better too. So two nice stakes on the turf, but it all starts in race 1 with the winningest horse in the country this year, Kernus K, looking for 7 in a row. I looked it up on Equibase. Kernus K is tied with 3 other horses with 6 wins this year. That's the most by any thoroughbred in the country. And of those 4 horses, Kernus K has the highest in earnings this year. So he's been running in the best races. He's won 6 in a row. His last 2, he's won right here at Delaware Park. He gets a new jockey on Saturday. Martin Schwann will ride this 4-year-old son of Great Notion for trainer Jamie Ness. Yetsit Hazelwood is kind of the horse's regular rider. Paco Lopez was aboard 2 starts ago. But Martin Schwann, he does well here at Delaware. And Schwann and Jamie Ness here at Delaware are 41% together in a positive ROI. So they're a dangerous combination. So it'll be cool to see that this guy gets try for 7 in a row. There's a couple other nice horses in the race. It's only a 5-horse field, but you have Rad Paisley, an 8-year-old who's made over $300,000. He's a 10-time winner. He's a 2-time winner at Delaware, 6 for 6 in the money. He had a nice win at Delaware last September against Starter Allowance Company. He's been off since then, so he's coming back off a long layoff. We'll see if the 8-year-old still has it. He had a 47 flat work on June 4th. and then 2 good work since then. So it looks like he's been training well down there at Laurel. And then you have Mike Simone, our second leading trainer of the meet. He has Just Relax in there. The 5 horse with Julian Laperoux named to ride. And that horse just had a nice win last out at Monmouth against Starter Allowance Company. He just got beat a neck by Cronus K 2 starts ago here at Delaware. So the 5 Just Relax, he'll be tough in there. So the 2 Cronus K, the 4 Rad Paisley, and the 5 Just Relax, they look like the main threats. The 1 Cyber Beast was a winner last time at Delaware against Beaten 10,000 Company, 76 buyer, but he's taking a step up in class. The 3 Triple Pass. This horse was a 4th behind Cronus K last time, only beaten 3.5 lengths, but they all have to beat Cronus K. It'll be cool to see the 4-year-old looking for his 7th win in a row and his 10th win overall. If he can get the job done, race 1 on Saturday, that'll kick off our popular early pick 5 with that low 15% takeout.
Yeah, I mean, interesting thing about Cronus K, the first 4 races of the streak, he was just killing horses. He was just dominating them. But the last couple, he's had to work for it. But he's one of those horses who seems to know where the wire is, because he won his last 2 by a nose and a neck. So he wants to be the one who's first across the line.
Yeah, Brad and Maryland by my friends, the Bowman, Dr. Tom Bowman's family, and Milton Higgins stable. So it's nice to see them with a nice Maryland bred. Are the Maryland breds still getting the Maryland bred bonus up here in Delaware this year, like they were last year?
Not yet. I believe that only kicks off when Laurel goes dark in the summer. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Laurel's running this week. Laurel's running is the last
weekend. Yep.
They're running against Colonial. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
On this weekend. Yep.
But it's still a nice 4-year-old. I'll be looking forward to seeing him run in race 1, and then race 7 is a nice race. Stop my stick here. Race 7's a nice starter allowance, 25,000 starter allowance for filly and mares. There's some nice horses in there. The 2 horse Patchabelle, a 6-year-old mare by Opportunity. She's a 12-time winner. She's made over 623,000. This will be her first start here at Delaware Park. She's rarely off the board. She's very consistent. She was 3rd last out, going a mile at Parks against Allowance Company. Now she's cutting back to a sprint. She's a 3-time winner, going 6 furlongs. So she'll be tough in there. But Gary Capuano has his nice 4-year-old filly in there, the 4 Onyx 10, who's by Street Magician. She's a 6-time winner from 16 stars over. She's 12 for 16 in the money. She's made almost 350,000. She has 3 wins here at Delaware, and she just came off the layoff and made her 4-year-old debut June 17th here at Delaware in a ratings handicap, and she rallied to win that day by a head with a 79 buyer speed figure. So that was her only start this year. So she's back in top form. It looks like Gary, she was a stakes winner. She won the Maryland Million Distaff last October as a 3-year-old. So she's sitting on a real nice 4-year-old campaign. Looks like Gary's found a real nice spot for this filly on Saturday in race 7. That's a nice little starter allowance race in between our 2 features.
Yeah, boy, it's a tough condition. It's haven't won 2 in 2026, which lets in a whole lot of horses, or have never won 4. Kind of feel like if you're a never won 4 horse, man, you could be up against it against some of these.
Yeah. Patchabelle's won 12, and Onyx 10's won 6, and then some other nice fillies in there. But those are the 2 best fillies in there. I'll probably be rooting for the local filly, the 4 Onyx 10. She has a race over the track this year. She beat some nice horses in that ratings handicap we had. So, yeah, I think the 4 Onyx 10's the horse to beat there in race 7.
Yeah, it's a fun little race there. So nice card Saturday. Once again, the Christiana, the Kent are the features, both on the turf. We'll do our little anti-rain dance in the morning and try and keep everything going. Anything else we should be looking for, Stan?
Well, the big horse Sovereignty is running in the Stephen Foster this Saturday, so I'll be rooting for him down there at Churchill. I hope he runs a big race. He's got to go against White Barrio, who beat him a couple months ago at Oaklawn. But Sovereignties, he has a race under his belt this year. White Barrio was already race fit, so Sovereignty was coming off the layoff at Oaklawn. We know he likes Churchill pretty good, right? He had a big win
okay
there.
Yeah.
He's done all right at Churchill. So I'll be rooting for Sovereignty. I'll be kind of watching that out of the corner of my eye. So that'll be cool to have a big race on the national stage.
Yep. And then soon enough, Saratoga opens. So
And the zebras, camels, and ostriches are right around the corner. The second
July
annual
4th, right?
July 4th, second annual safari sprint. It packed the place last year. You couldn't find a seat. The place was mobbed. It was a wild scene. And so they're coming back. Hopefully we'll have some nice weather July 4th. We have some America 250 celebrations in store, I believe, for July 4th. I think Uncle Sam, another ride down the Delaware Park stretch. So that'll be a big day. Come on out July 4th. We'll have live horse racing. That's a Saturday. And we'll have the live exotic animal races with the camels, zebras, and the ostriches.
Well, next week when we do the podcast, you'll have to give us some tips on how to handicap the ostriches and camels.
All right, we'll do. Yeah, you can win some money. You can win some money on them too.
All right. I want the exacta with that one and that one. All right. Stan Salter, thank you so much as always. Good luck this weekend. Hopefully we'll be playing along, and hopefully we gave the people some good tips here.
All right, good stuff. Let's keep the rain away. We'll have a big Saturday.
All right, looking forward to it.
All right, thanks, Frank.
Thanks, Stan. Take care, man. That's a wrap. Thanks so much to Stan Salter. Thanks to trainer Graham Motion for joining us. And most of all, thanks to you for listening or watching Midlantic Racing Today, Delaware Park Today, Delaware Park Today, powered by the Racing Biz, theracingbiz.com, presented by our friends at Delaware Park Racing and Casino. You can like us, follow us, subscribe, all that good stuff anywhere you get your podcast. We very much appreciate it. We'll be back next week with more Midlantic Racing Today. Meantime, have a great weekend, everybody. My name is Frank Vespi. We'll be talking with you soon.